Hey everybody, it's Leero from Leero Gaming, bringing you today a Spellshot Armageddon Spellcaster build. Now, this is a non-chucking, pure spellcasting build, so if you like erasing the map using your spells, this is the build for you. It is going to clear Chaos level 35 with its eyes closed, to where, ironically, the only real danger you're going to face are going to be environmental barrels. As with all my videos, we're going to have full details on this build. We're going to talk about the passives, the hero allocation points, as well as all the gear, and then show you some gameplay as well as far as how to play this build. It's extremely fun. It's extremely powerful. Let's jump in and take a look at it. As always, if you want to support the channel, going as simple as dropping a like goes a long way. If you have any questions about the build, make sure to drop them in the comments below. And if you need any help with your build or your character progression, make sure to come and check me out during my Twitch streams at twitch.tv/LeeroyGamingStream, where I play with you viewers on a regular basis. Without further ado now, let's go ahead and take a look at this Spellshot Armageddon spellcasting build. Alright, we'll go ahead and start with the hero point allocation. So as far as the archetypes, you can probably just go Village Idiot here. This build does not require you to stack any cooldown reduction for spells. We are going ambidextrous, so we do not need any attunement. So the way I recommend it is max out your strength, then max out your dex, and then whatever you have left over is in constitution for a little extra health for survival. Alright, next let's go ahead and talk about the passive skill trees. We are going to be using ambidextrous. Starting with the spellshot side of things, we are going to go 3 out of 3 in magic bullets to buff our damage based off our huge amount of spell power. We are going to get 5 out of 5 into Spell Sniper. I have this buff to 7 out of 5 for up to 84% spell crit hit chance. Then we're going to go ahead and get 5 out of 5 in Just Warming Up. This is going to increase our fire rate. This is important. We want to be shooting as many bullets as we can in order to proc our capstone, and I'll talk about that when we talk about gear. It's important not to get mage armor. We want to make sure that our ward is broken to maximize our damage based off our shield. We are going to put 1 into glass cannon. Again, we want to make sure we don't automatically recharge ward, because we want this the ward minimized, and it's going to give us 30% spell damage because of it. After that, we're going to get high thread count, an extra 3 spell weaving stacks, so we can get up to 8. This is again big about stacking max spell power. And then 5 out of 5 an imbued weapon. This is going to again buff our weapon damage based on the spells we cast. We do cast 2 different spells, so our guns will do respectable damage, even though they are not the main source of our damage. Then we go ahead and put 1 slot, 1 kill. Again, more gun damage based off our spell weaving stacks. Can't go wrong here. 44% weapon or gun damage just for 1 point. And then the big thing for this build is double knot. We are going to get 3 out of 3 in this, but again, the armor we use is going to give us 3 more. So this is big. Whenever Fatemaker scores a critical hit with a spell, which will happen quite a bit, they deal bonus gun damage of their gun's element. And so the bonus gun damage is now 42% of the damage dealt. This is going to be a huge boost to damage of our spells. And then our capstone is going to be Sever the Thread. Again, gun critical hits have a chance to instantly reset all spell cooldowns. This has an internal cooldown of 5 seconds. It's nutter butter. What's going to happen is you're going to cast all your spells, and then you're going to just unload on an enemy. You're going to crit so many times, this will probably proc instantly, so it's not unusual to have all your spells up every 5 seconds. Then moving on to Graveborn. 3 out of 3 into Fateful Thralls. We don't have a lot of companions. It's just our main Demi-Lich companion combined with the Dark Hydra to spawn, but that's okay because again, this is not a Chuck build. And then we're going to get 2 out of 5 for Mortal Vessel because we do not need Essence Drain. Don't need any cooldown reduction. For our self-healing, we have Sanguine Sacrament. This is the main way we stay alive. Every time we cast a spell, you get basically 30% of your max health over 2 seconds. Because you're going to be casting 2, 3, 4 spells at a time, back to back. While you're casting, you're going to be constantly regenerating at a crazy rate. 2 points into Dark Pact to increase our dark magic damage by 8%. One of our spells is going to be dark magic damage, so this is big. We do not need Harvest because, again, we're not really focusing on companion damage. 3 out of 3 in Dark Hydra, again, just to buff our Faithful Thralls to potentially get up to 3 more companions for that multiplier. But again, our Dark Hydras are not the focus of our damage. Then Stain of the Soul. very important, spells deal bonus dark magic damage. So this is big because unlike Dark Pact, so Dark Pact says dark magic damage is increased, which requires a spell to actually be doing dark magic damage. This instead deals bonus damage, so even our second spell, which does fire damage, will now do bonus dark magic damage, and that will be increased by this dark pact modifier, as well as all of our spells, or rather enchants, that increase dark magic damage as well. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and put 3 points into Ascension, again maxing out our max health, so up to 60% max health, up to 60% additional spell damage to really lay it on heavy for DPS. Alright, now we're going to talk about gear. I do want to point out most of my gear here is going to be kind of volatile and primordial level. You do not need to have primordial gear. You don't even need volatile gear. You can do just well enough with chaos or even normal legendary gear as long as you get the right type of gear. So that's very, very important. I'm going to go ahead and start with weapons. And your primary weapon you're going to use is, for me, I have a Blazing Nightshade of the Squall. You want this kind of Nightshade Dahlia SMG for one reason only. Notice the fire rate, 16.78 per second, and it's also a time 4. So this is a combination of doing insane amounts of firepower as far as the quantity of bullets. So if you take a look, even without our stacks, look how much ammo or how many bullets there's shooting. And again, because our gameplay is all about getting max amount of crits, so we have that highest chance of proccing our capstone, that's all we care about this. Now this primary weapon is going to have enchant on spellcast, increase fire damage by 30% for 5 seconds, because we're going to be spamming 2, 3, maybe 4 spells back to back, depending how good of a spell roll you have. This is going to be huge for our fire spell. Now, if you want to get real fancy, you can basically get a second weapon that's kind of similar to this and put on spellcast, increases ability damage by 30%. Now, this would be for boss killing only when we swap over to a dual calamity build. And the reason for this is double knot scales. It basically gets benefits from ability damage. The mechanics behind it, it's a little confusing because it doesn't mention it here, but people have tested this and they've confirmed to me that yes, indeed, this is going to proc off ability damage. So go figure. But that's the reason for that second gun. Now it is completely optional. You don't need it. It'll save you, an extra 5 to 10 seconds per boss run or something like that. Then for the second gun, I just get a Masterwork Handbow. This is purely so I can cheaply get my stacks of spell weaving, spell threads up and going. You don't need it, but again, it just helps you from saving ammo. Everything else, again, is up to you. Now, if you want a really fun gun, if you get a Blazing Queen's legendary, what's great about this gun is it's going to basically proc when you crit a meteor, a white meteor that will come down. And this is going to scale of your spell damage. It's going to hit like crazy. I've had this crit for 200, 300, 400,000. Most of the time, I don't even bother because everything else gets destroyed. But if you want to get more meteors into this build, then you can go ahead and pick up a Blazing or a Queen's Cry and just throw on a fire damage buff, just like your primary weapon. Now let's talk about rings. You just want the best possible spell damage rings you can get. The only thing that is required to maximize your damage is while ward is not full, effects are increased by 100%. This is why we mentioned in the passive section that we don't want to regenerate our ward because we want to double this. So this is a primordial, this is a god roll. Right there, it's going to give us 44% spell damage. And then everything else here is pretty godly as well. The pistol reload is not big because we're using SMG in this case, unless you're swapping over to the Queen's Cry. But the spell crit hit and damage is amazing. So just get the very best 2 rings you can. For your shield, we're going with a Cursed Wit. Again, does not matter. Primordial, it could be just as well the most basic one because we're going to burn to that capacity and none of the other effects scale off the ranking of it. But what we care about here as well, ward is depleted, gain 17% damage reduction. That's going to help us survival. and then you gain 100% increased damage dealt to nearby enemies. I have max word on this, it just actually isn't optimal. It'd be better if you had plus 10% max health, or if you had like a reload rate or a fire rate increase, that would be better. But again, what doesn't matter is the enchant. So the next enchant we want to stack is on Spellcast, increase dark magic damage by 30% for 5 seconds. Next, we're going to go ahead and look at the neck piece, and what we really care about here is going to be just make sure we have Spellshot power and dark magic damage, because our calamities are going to be dark magic damage. It's going to buff that. If you can get all damage on this like I have, that's great. The companion element, the legendary, does actually not matter. This is not a companion build. You could potentially mess around with some other effects. There are neck pieces that will increase your damage, but I just wanted to kind of show that's not even necessary for this build. It's going to be icing on the cake if you want to mess around with it. Up to you, but what we really care about is, again, those 2 primary stats and that all damage element. So this just happens to be my best roll I have, factoring those 3 elements, so I have it included here. Next comes the armor, and so this is key. So I have this Warp Paradigm armor. So big thing here, Spellshot power is increased, and we care about those passives. So again, it's all about double knot. So you can get a weaker version of this, is not a big deal, but this is gonna give you that +3 to double knot. That's huge. As far as other stats, it has all damage, spell damage. That's both God roll. Companion crit chance is fine. Again, this is not a companion build, so you get something else in there, that's fine. And then the legendary passive is important. Melee and ability damage are increased by 50% of your increased spell damage. As we mentioned, the double knot seems to be scaling off ability damage, so this is going to up that even higher. And so this is why this seems to be functioning at a very, very high level currently. So again, we care about that legendary effect, and we care about the +3 to double knot. And then we come down to spells. And so we are going to be dueling 2 very specific spells. You want a Sunder spell, and in a perfect world, you want this version. This is a burgeoning, quaking Sunder. And so a couple things to note here. Number 1, at the very bottom it says, sends a second burst of energy through the fissure, sending another shock of damage to the original damage area and branching out towards nearby enemies. This is huge. This is going to hit things really, really far away. This is kind of actually what's going to clear all the trash enemies. Take a look at that. Look at that range. It's literally like spreading and going throughout this entire room. That's absolutely bonkers. And again, if in a perfect world you want something with 2 spell charges, also do note there's a 15% critical chance on this. This is important. You also want to make sure that this is in the first slot here on the left, and I'll mention why in just a second. And then your second spell is going to be your Calamity. This is going to be your boss killer. And so with this one, it's kind of weird. You're going to notice this 0 critical chance percentage, but we've tested this over and over, and it definitely seems like Calamity does crit. So I don't know if this is a type or whatnot. What is important is that you want to get this Calamity and dark damage to min-max your DPS, and this very specific version at the bottom, it says Meteor releases a ring of projectiles on impact. That's big for AoE. We have a God roll here with +1 projectiles per cast and 2 spellcasts. Again, when you're starting out, even if you get a one without extra projectiles or extra spellcasts, that's fine. This is going to be amazing no matter what, but this is what you're leaning for. Also, want to point out on this one, you're going to get on spellcast increases gun damage by 30%. This is nice, just to again boost your gun damage. Although if you can't roll this is probably the one that you want to omit if you got everything else. I don't think I mentioned it, but the other one on the Sunder is going to be increase base damage by 15% for 10 seconds. And let me show you what the Calamity looks like, because it looks bonkers. Take a look at that. Notice there's 2 meteors. And each one of them spawns like multiple small meteors. So again, this is going to not only destroy whatever you're hitting, but also create even more AoE. This is how you're going to absolutely melt the entire screen. Now, I did mention the importance of where you put these spells, and I don't know why this is how it works, but you do want to make sure that Sunder spell is on the left, because let me show you something. If we go under skills and under our crit hit chance, notice here it says right now our spell critical hit chance is 61.8%. But for whatever reason, if you were to swap these, okay, so let's unequip these, And let's do the Calamity here. And let's do the Sunder here. And now, if we go here, notice this is kind of crazy. Our spell crit hit chance is now 15.4%. And this is not a visual bug. All we did was swap these places, and the spell crit chance went from 15 to 60. I believe this is because of that interaction that the left side is your primary slot, and the ambidextrous adds the right slot, and it just doesn't seem to apply the crit element. So because of our Sundering spell has that base critical hit chance on it, we want to make sure you have that on the left so you get the most out of that, and then all your crit hit chance modifiers apply. And that's going to be a big part of this. So do note that. And then the final thing is your melee weapon. Now this is actually something I didn't even reutilize actively in my recording, but I can. So you want the Spellblade, so the Glittering Spellblade of Anarchy. So two things to note here. Number one, the enchant on spellcast increase elemental damage by 20%. That kind of completes your combination of spell effects you want. But this is what we care about. Spellblade effect. Melee attacks deal spell damage instead of melee damage, and most importantly, melee attacks increase spell crit hit chance by 80% for 6 seconds. So all you got to do is melee anything at all, and you're going to have an additional 80% spell crit hit chance. Again, I didn't even use this on the run that I recorded for this footage, but it can get even more bonkers with this ability here. So very powerful. And again, all you got to do is just hit something. Now, ironically, because this hits off a spell damage instead of melee damage, this melee attack will hit for 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 with this silly little wand. So very powerful. Again, this is not a melee build. It's totally optional once your gear gets good. But while you're kind of gearing up, this may be more useful for you actively. So that is the gear that you are aiming for. Now let's talk about the gameplay rotation. And so it's for the most part pretty simple. At the beginning of your run or any time after you've had a little downtime, you do want to make sure and use your Masterwork Handbow to just get your stacks of your spell weaving up. You want to keep it at 8 out of 8 pretty much the entire time to maximize your DPS. And then you're going to run around with your Nightshade gun or whatever the equivalent is of your gun that has the highest fire rate possible. You're going to be opening up your attacks with your Sunder ability. This is important because we're going to have that increased damage buff on that, so you want your Sunder to be first. Again, that's going to be also great for killing all the trash around. And then you can swap to your Calamity, and what you basically want to do is get both elements on cooldown. As soon as they're all on cooldown, just find an enemy to target with your gun and slam it in the face of your gun, and to get the reset, the proc of the resets. And again, every 5 seconds you should be able to get that back up and going. Rinse and repeat. Now, if you want a little damage boost, if there's an enemy near you, just melee hit it, and as soon as you melee hit it, you're going to get that extra 80% spell crit hit chance for 6 seconds, which is, again, absolutely bonkers. Now, there is an alternate gameplay style that I use on the boss kills, and with that, all you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and swap your Sunder for a second Calamity if you have one. And you can technically get more damage on bosses with double Calamity. If you don't have too high-end double Calamities, don't worry about it. You can stick with Sunder Calamity, but double Calamities does technically do more damage against bosses. And in that case, as mentioned in the gun portion of the video, you want to swap over to a secondary gun that just simply has the on spellcast increases your ability damage by 30% to min-max your boss damage. Again, that's purely optional, but it can help squeeze out even more DPS. So again, guys, that's everything you need to know for the Spellshot Armageddon build. What are your thoughts on this build? Have you tried it out? Let me know your comments below. If you have any other questions about, do let me know as well. As always, if you enjoy this content, do drop a like. It goes a long way to helping me getting these videos out there because of the lovely YouTube algorithm. If you want to see more looter shooter content and you like my style here, make sure to subscribe. Do join our Discord. All the information you need is in the description below. We get a great growing little community for looter shooter content, getting carries, getting informational help, and just a really good positive community. And then finally, again, if you want to go a step further and support the channel, you can always go to my merch store. You can find the description below. If you like these super sweet Leroy Gaming t-shirts, mugs, and other swag, every dollar of those proceeds goes directly into building and supporting this channel. So with that being said, guys, again, remember to drop those likes, subscribe, and do check me out at twitch.tv/LeeroyGamingStream, where I like to hang out and game with you guys. That being said, thank you so much again, guys, and I will see you in the next video.